Hello, and welcome to the Shelly Show. Thank you guys. Thank you for joining today. I'm Shailendra, and you watching this simulcast live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You know the drill. I hope you're safe and observing the protocols in your area so that we keep each other healthy, safe, and secure. Okay, today we'll talk about something really interesting. But before that, I'll just do the basic protocols for you to view this episode and other sessions that run on emerging technologies live. I would request you to follow me so that you can be alerted when the live session is on. This gives you an opportunity to ask directly the questions from our guests. So please press the follow button on LinkedIn and Twitter, subscribe button on YouTube, and if you're watching this on Facebook, then please like, share this video with groups which are artificial intelligence focused. This particular series, Artificial Intelligence Insight series, is focused on various sectors where AI is impacting in the past few years and months, and how is it going to be in the future. So I bring in thought leaders from all parts of the world. Okay, also, please tell me, where are you joining in from? Which city you're joining in us from, and say hi, and don't forget to write a comment or write a question that you may have that I will take within at the end of this show, as always. Okay, so if you've got a question, put that in the comment section. In 2018, long before the pandemic started, I wrote an article on intelligent hospitals, which was published on TechRadar, where I talked about AI assisted robotic surgery, virtual nursing assistance, aid clinical judgment or diagnosis. But since then, a lot has changed. And a lot has changed because of the pandemic. It actually streamlined the entire hospital industry, the healthcare industry. So I thought, why not focus one of the episodes of AI Insight series with thought leaders on healthcare. So this particular episode will be focused on healthcare. But let me bring in the guests. My first guest is Imtiaz, all the way from UK. He's a regular on this show. He was there for the past 3 episodes, and I hope he'll be here for near future. Imtiaz is the founder of, for people who don't know him, Imtiaz is the founder of AI startup Deep Learn Strategies Limited, that is working on applications of AI towards fintech, metaverse, and I think metaverse and healthcare have a lot to play in the next few years and months. So we'll talk about that with him. And he's ranked as one of the leading AI influencers and serves on the board of martechpost.com, where he's also a guest author and a guest editor. He speaks on AI across various platforms and also at World Economic Forum in Davos. So without any further ado, let me bring in Imtiaz. Hi Imtiaz, welcome to the
Hi,
Shelly Show, the AI Insight series. How are you doing today?
hi, Shailendra. It's a pleasure to be here, and we're looking forward to this session. It's going to be a very fascinating talk in a very hot area.
Absolutely. I love this part of it's very fascinating to talk about healthcare. And let me bring in the other guests so that we can quickly run through this. My second guest is again Utpal Chakraborty. Everyone, all of you guys who are regular to this show know him. But for those who don't know him, he's an eminent data scientist, AI researcher, strategist, and a thought leader with more than 2 decades of industry experience, worked at IBM, Capgemini, and was heading AI for Yes Bank up until recently. He's currently the CDO, or the Chief Digital Officer at Allied Digital Services Limited. He's a well-known speaker, again, one of the top industry leaders, thought leaders, who's been ranked on various platforms as an industry thought leader. So without any further ado, let me bring in Utpal. Hi Utpal, welcome to AI Insight
Hello.
series. On today, the topic is healthcare. I know it's very close to your heart as well. What do you think?
Yes, Shailendra, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to this series. And hello, Imtiaz. So I think excited to discuss this with this eminent speakers. Yeah.
Good stuff. So let me just bring in the third guest as well as soon as possible, quickly, so that we can just start the conversation. Our third guest is Samir Sinha, who is the co-founder and the CEO of Global Medics, a virtual hospital in the cloud. Now we'll have to ask him about that. Earlier, he was the founder and CEO of Robonomics AI, an Australian-born platform business aiming to democratize AI, if I'm getting it right in my tongue, and RPA adoption. He's registered with the Australian Government Research Council as a researcher in AI and has been leading the development of deep learning algorithms with papers published on international journals. So without any further ado, let me bring in Samir, if we have him. Um, Hi Samir, how are you? Welcome
Hello.
to
Hello
the
from
show,
Sydney.
the AI Insight series.
Thank you.
Today's topic is healthcare, which is very close to your heart. Before I start the conversation, Samir, I just want you to tell something about you which not many people know. A fun fact about you.
Fun fact. Now, that was not in the brief.
No, not at all.
I'm a closet photographer, so
Uh-huh.
I love taking pictures, um, mainly portrait photography.
Hmm, very interesting. That's good, and I've seen his work as well, by the way, because we live in Sydney, and I bumped into him at one of our common friends, and he was taking pictures there. So I thought, what is this dude doing taking pictures? And I didn't know that he was CEO of a startup on a healthcare startup. So let's very quickly get on. But before I get on, guys, if you're liking this, what you're watching, AI insights on healthcare, please press the like button. Share this video with as many people as possible. Don't forget to press the follow or the subscribe button wherever you are, whichever. Today we are actually going on live on multiple platforms. We are live not only on my various social media platforms, but also global media's, global medics social media platforms, and Utpal's your social media platform as well at the same time. So guys, whichever media platform you are on, please press the follow button or subscribe button or whichever way what works. So, and don't forget to press the like button. Okay, very quickly, let's talk about this and start the conversation. Um, I'll start with Imtiaz. Imtiaz, so what are the key areas of healthcare that AI is making inroads into at the moment? And I did mention about a couple of things around um, virtual nursing assistants and AI assisted surgeries that we were talking about. And even during COVID, I remember we were able to predict whether a person is running through COVID or not, depending upon the condition of their lungs. So lots of things have been done. So please tell us about where is it all focused on at the moment.
Well, thank you, Shailendra. If we take a high-level overview, we can split this into a number of areas. So we can take, for example, computer vision. And computer vision is being applied with medical imaging across healthcare. So examples will be looking at X-rays or CT scans and then engaging in diagnostics or effectively assisting radiologists, as an example. Another area has been natural language processing, because a lot increasingly medical records are going electronic with electronic health records. There's a vast amount of information there, which would mean that you could mine it, you could run analytics on it, transformer models from deep learning, and look to understand and perhaps identify points or even predict who's more at risk of certain illnesses, or understand their medical history. In fact, you can even use potentially multitasking, multimodal transformers, and combine computer vision with text language with radiologists, etc. Increasingly. And we have areas like robotic surgery, and the potential for remote surgery is there as well. For example, in China, in 2019, using a 5G network, a surgeon successfully conducted brain surgery on a Parkinson's patient whilst the surgeon was 3,000 kilometers away. That's nearly 2,000 miles away. Crazy, isn't it? So robotic surgery and using AI and indeed combined with virtual technology, immersive technology, help train the surgeons, or just making sure that the surgery is conducting correctly if it's remote, as examples. And then, of course, we have drug discovery that we'll talk about later, perhaps, but that's been really exploding with AI. Companies like In Silico Medicine and others out there who've been applying AI to really disrupt and accelerate that whole process. And also, of course, if we link that all together, we ultimately go back to the clinical side, bringing it all together with computer vision, text analytics. And the impact of COVID-19 has been that remote medicine, which was previously seen as something that would take a long, long time, became a default in many countries when GPs, physicians, etc., had to treat their patients through because of the risk of being infected with COVID and spreading that. And so it actually showed that it could work. And so I think going forward, as technology enhances, AI will probably play a big role in expanding remote medicine too.
Mhm. Okay, let me get to Utpal. Utpal, what do you see in your part of the world? So, guys, who all are watching, so we've got, so this is technology at its best. We've got Imtiaz sitting in the UK, and he's got a European and US point of view. Utpal sitting in India has got a bit of India point of view, and Samir and me sitting in Sydney have got an Aussie point of view, and we're all connected through technology today. So, Utpal, what do you see in India? How is healthcare being utilized? And I think the government of India is playing a huge role in driving the digital healthcare component as well. What do you think about that? What's going on there?
Yeah, thank you, Shalendra. So I think I completely agree with what Imtiaz was stating. So, and even I believe that we are actually living in the golden era of digital healthcare. Okay, and I think the coming years it is going to be like that, and same goes for India also. So some of the computer vision use cases that Imtiaz talked about, like here also, people have tried that. I don't know how much successful it was or how much it has been implemented at a scale in a hospital or something like that because of various reasons. But I know startups, I know academy incubation centers who has tried computer vision on different kind of clinical imaging kind of use cases, right? So that is number one. Number two, in fact, one startup, I'd not like to take their name at this point of time.
Yes.
They have come to me for a very brilliant use case, like in any kind of diagnostic report. Okay, normally whatever, because see in India there are, I mean, it is kind of everywhere there are diagnostic centers. Okay, and you can do all your blood test, your other clinical tests from different diagnostic centers. Now, what they are trying to do is they are trying to collaborate with these diagnostic centers, and for each and every diagnostic report, okay, whether it is a blood test or a urine test or any kind of test, they are trying to give some kind of a predictive and prescriptive kind of things, and that includes some of the suggestions, like if it is a lifestyle kind of a disease, probably diabetes or something like that. Probably you can try out some of the yoga, meditation, some workout, some kind of things, some food that you can basically adopt, and some lifestyle changes, right? And these are all basically the analytics part of it, looking into different parameters. Because normally what happens, so till now in India, I will tell you, probably this is not true for other countries. So it is just the report that you get in your blood test, right? And they will just highlight, okay, if the parameters are not within the range. But that is not enough. Okay, probably, as we say, that AI can act as a second pair of eyes for the doctor. Okay, it is a helping eyes for the doctor. So I think this kind of a prediction or recommendation kind of thing in each and every report which is coming up, it may not be correct always, because anyways doctor is there to actually verify it, but it's coming. So this is one another use case that one incubation center from one of the top technical institutions here, they came up, and I was like mentoring them, and they are working on that. I know this is a difficult task, okay, in a in a country like India, because it is so diversified and so all those things. But these are some things which are going on, and I'm hoping that it is we will be able to see more use cases in coming days.
No, I totally agree with you. And yoga on, I think during the COVID time, yoga on video became a trend. Lots of companies actually started doing that, as they were having someone who was a yoga expert who would come in, and on the other side of Zoom would try to do that, and then everyone at home were taking care of their health and stuff. I think that became a huge trend during COVID. Having said that, one thing comes to mind, and before I get to Samir, this is around the fact that there was a big scare up until 20, and I'll come to you, Imtiaz, on this as well, because this is very, very important. There was a huge scare amongst the doctors that AI is going to take away their jobs. So there was kind of a little, what do you say, acceptance for them to actually agree on, utilizing AI techniques. Uh, Before I get to that question, Samir, you've done amazingly different. You've taken a different approach altogether. You've we worked together on a little initiative as well during COVID when we were trying to, and you've extended it now. So talk, and I don't want to steal the thunder. So tell us about what do you do at Global Medics, and how is it different to any other going to any other doctor? And guys, please, everyone who's watching, this is important. Please press the thumbs up button so that more people can watch this, and also like, share, follow, subscribe, whatever it is that you can do to support this initiative. As much as you can support it, it is better for people to learn from it. Samir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shailendra. So when we started with this AI company, Robonomics AI, that was in 2016, one of our first clients was a healthcare organization. And they had around about 25,000 people. And our task was find areas for AI and automation within this large healthcare organization. So we were like a child in a candy shop, looking for opportunities of AI everywhere. And then we developed some 4 or 5 proof of concepts to prove that this is how AI can solve some of the problems which their hospitals and their aged care centers and their community care centers were struggling with. However, those solutions were just proof of concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And when we tried to democratize it, we hit a brick wall. We hit a brick wall because of so many reasons. Number one, it was probably way ahead of its time, precisely 4 years ahead of the pandemic, 4 or 5 years ahead of the pandemic. Secondly, people were worried because this was health. So it's not just a concern about doctors losing their jobs. A doctor is trained to be conservative because he's dealing with human lives. And we need to be cognizant of the fact that an error or experimentation in that space could not just result in loss of revenues, but people could die. And there couldn't be a worse disaster than that. So it's just the nature of healthcare. It's required to be conservative. Okay. Through the journey, we developed our own perspectives, our own hypothesis, and we realized that the father of modern enterprise or the way modern operations are structured was Henry Ford. So everything, if you want to drive efficiency, if you want to drive low cost, you put it on an assembly line. And then we looked at the operations within a hospital. What do you have? You have an assembly line where a raw material, which is a patient, comes in through the door, through an emergency department or through the OPD, and then goes through different stations, just the same way as a product in a factory goes through different stations. And the people who are working, who are tightening the screws, sorry for the pun, but these doctors are under immense stress. Okay, they have their own targets of how much they have to deliver. And then came the pandemic, where these numbers went totally out of the window, off the charts. So the doctors, the healthcare workers were under so much stress. What does this result in? This results in a patient being treated like a raw material in an assembly line.
Yep.
And I think the core purpose of AI should be to rehumanize healthcare. Let's start looking at patients as human beings, not as patient number XYZ on bed number ABC. But given the pressures given on the workers, given the way our healthcare systems are organized, this is not easy to do. Have you ever been in a hospital? Does it feel welcoming?
Not at all.
It does feel like you are on I mean, it's like a dentist chair in a scary environment, right? And you have all these people with faces covered, with bodies covered, who are looking after you, but there's no connection with them. There's no opportunity for empathy. Why? Because the nurses there are busy taking down your vital signs. The doctors are busy doing a lot of administrative work. And this is where we can envision taking that robot out of the jobs that our healthcare workers are doing, so that it provides them the opportunity to be more human. So we started Global Medics with the intent of humanizing healthcare. And humanizing healthcare by bringing in AI. And that would enable medical innovations of different kinds. So that's the vision that we drove. And the starting point was, of course, we had the Omicron variant, the Delta variant strike India. And we had, I don't know, millions of people infected, hundreds of thousands dying. The healthcare system there was overwhelmed, as would be any place in the world. We did not have vaccines that had the opportunity to be mass, people were not vaccinated at that time. And actually, we did not even know that this was a new strain till we saw how people started dying. So a couple of us, we said, hey, let's do something about it. So because the doctors in India were overwhelmed, we reached out to our friends in Australia, New Zealand, in UK, and there was a very large team. We had 130 doctors from 9 different countries who came on our platform, and they started advising patients recover at home. And they were doing this voluntarily. So this was, and because they were placed in different parts of the world, we were offering it 24/7 and for free. And people were getting this advice on how to recover at home. And we studied that process in minute detail. What was bothering the patients? What was bothering the doctors? How can we make that whole engagement more human, more better, more empathetic? And through that, we evolved our own philosophies, our own hypothesis of what the future of healthcare could look like, which formed the basis of launching what we call one of the world's first global virtual hospital. Imagine all 4 of us are multi-specialty doctors, and we are all treating a patient in a remote corner of the world. Okay, Shailendra, you are a cardiologist. Imtiaz, you are a nephrologist. Okay, Sydney, London. Utpal, you could be a skin specialist or a psychiatrist. And we are all looking at the data from a patient in a remote corner and then studying what's happening with him. Imagine this is like breaking down geographical boundaries. And what is more, that care is being delivered not just by these specialists from across the world, but engaged in that care are the friends, family, caretakers of the patient, no matter where they are. So now, part of the care is being delivered through our clinical expertise. okay? And with AI and everything working in tandem to analyze all the data that comes through, balance of the care is being delivered to the patient by his loved ones, who till now were actively excluded. You, sir, I know he's your father, but you cannot enter where the doctor is seeing your father. Okay. So there are some of these elements. Now we are saying, hey, you're based in New York, your dad's unwell in Tumkur. Okay. Log on to the web portal, download the app, and look after your father. Be involved in the care. So those are the kind of drastic changes that we are trying to bring about. And all this can only be enabled by AI.
Good stuff. Let me quickly come, and that's really, really emotional. And I'm so much emotionally attached to this whole phenomenon itself because of the tragedy that struck me at the time when we started all of this. But coming back to you, Imtiaz, so what do you see as challenges? And what I'll do is also I'll try to bring it to life later. But what are the challenges you see in terms of adoption of AI in healthcare at a very high level? And where do you see it um, going? The challenges that we could actually are the human challenges, the technical challenges. What kind of challenges are we facing, Imtiaz?
Sure. So first of all, expanding upon what Samir said earlier, and that is that when with healthcare, and it's similar with autonomous driving, right? As Elon Musk made a statement, I think, recently on Twitter, where he kind of acknowledged that getting to level 5 autonomy indirectly, if it was going to be more challenging than perhaps he previously thought, without quite saying those exact words. And that is that, when AI, deep neural networks, etc., are very effective in social media and e-commerce. But if you get an incorrect recommendation, or from Netflix, for example, for a movie or whatever, or, you're browsing for sweatshirt tops or shirts, and instead you get given a pair of trousers by mistake. Nobody dies. There's no injury, etc. But in an autonomous vehicle or in healthcare, in diagnostics, if a misclassification occurs and an error occurs, then that could have very serious consequences for the individual who gets the wrong information and misdiagnosis, etc. So understanding explainability, transparency, trust, causality, causal inference, these are all things that essentially regulators are looking at. And whilst the AI technology is definitely getting better, for example, transformer models with self-attention are arguably more intuitive or more interpretable than some of the other techniques. But also we're going for things like concept whitening on CNNs and other approaches. Recent research from MIT in December, which showed that you could visualize the neural network and work out what was being switched on and off, and even switch off connections that were giving bad results. These are all things that are going to play a big role going forwards. And then I think in autonomous driving, then perhaps there may be some application in healthcare. You have liquid neural networks, which are sparse networks, which are much more interpretable and handle causal inference. We're also seeing things like neurosymbolic AI slowly starting to emerge, that merge symbolic reasoning with deep neural networks, again, to deal with explainability and causal inference. So that's one part. The other part is going from research lab in AI to real world practice. And an example is at Google with AI or medical imaging for diabetic retinopathy, get over 90% on their model. But when they deployed it in the real world in a test situation, that accuracy collapsed. And that was because in the real world, whilst the model was run on test results that were choosing or cherry picking, if you like, whatever word you want to use, high quality images, in the real world, in the field, they found sometimes the images were poor and the AI would automatically reject it. But that problem was then, the image has already been taken, and it's what you're going to do, go and bring the patient back in and take the image again. So perhaps there had to be an earlier filtering, a warning at the early stage. It's like when you take a selfie for driver's license or whatever, or KYC, know your customer purposes. It gives you a tip when the image is good. Maybe that has to be built in healthcare, but as a solution. at the earlier stage, and then also times when the hospital had internet connection problems when it was in some of the emerging or developing world country or non-OECD countries, I should say. And then it was offline, and then suddenly the AI wasn't working. They didn't know what to do. So these are some of the teething problems that we need to get around. The other element has been data, isn't it? All about the data. And here we have a big challenge, which is that, for example, in the UK, in Europe, and in the US and Canada, and other countries, I'm sure Australia, etc., we have data privacy regulations. So in the US, HIPAA, in the UK and the EU, GDPR, where healthcare is a special category, where patient privacy is protected, which is important. But at the same time, to scale machine learning, you need more access to data. So it's a catch-22. And indeed, also often that data is siloed. Even within the hospital itself, may often have different databases and different database systems within the same hospital. So the same patient, if he or she has been to different departments in that hospital, the data has been kept siloed in different servers. So this, again, is where techniques like federated learning with differential privacy will be absolutely fundamental to scaling healthcare, machine learning in healthcare. And we have approaches from NVIDIA with something called Clara, where they work with King's College Hospital in London to show that it can work across dispersed servers in hospitals, and also things like Flower.dev, which has been developed by academics and is being shown to scale successfully with interoperability. So it's really about explainability, trust, transparency, and scale, and the data getting more working across decentralized data, and while protecting patient privacy. So these are effectively the key areas that are fundamental to scaling AI.
That's a good point. What I will do is I'll bring it to life in a minute. But before that, Utpal, how do you see that different in India? Because in my opinion, AI at the moment is still at the hospital level, hasn't reached to a common doctor going, a person going to a doctor, it has not reached there. Do you see any difference there? How is it different to the rest of the world in terms of adoption?
Yeah, so I think mostly, I mean, in the healthcare industry, at least, the AI is in the background. It is invisible, right? So some of the trends that I can see today is basically the preventive healthcare. Okay, and it is getting a little bit of traction here because of the wearable devices. Okay, so many companies now they are selling wearable devices, and they are gathering data. They are giving some kind of, although it is in a nascent state, I would say, but they are doing some kind of analytics on that data. But the problem here is what Imtiaz has highlighted, right? I mean, getting those data, because it is not only your health parameters coming on your wearable devices, it is also the other medical history that you have that may be residing either in a diagnostic center or probably mostly, okay, because even doctors doesn't hold your those kind of information in a digital format, or probably you will have a physical copy, at least in India. Okay, neither your healthcare providers, right? So that is a challenge. Now aggregating this data and correlating it and coming with a holistic approach in terms of giving them a accurate kind of a prediction or any kind of this thing is not yet happened. But I think the intrusion of wearable devices and technologies is taking it towards that direction. Okay, because ultimately what they are going to do with that data that they are collecting, one is definitely you are getting everything, your heart rate, this, that, and all other health parameters. But at the same time, they are also collecting this huge data. And today or tomorrow, they will have to bring some kind of a value out of that data to their customers, right? So it is going in that direction, but bringing the other parameters, health parameters and medical histories into the complete loop, I think it is still a challenge here in India that I can see, Shailendra. But yes, of course, the wearable devices are very hot today. So everyone in the road, you will see that they are wearing some of the other devices here. Yes.
That's interesting. I think at least what we have learned from these two gentlemen, and I'll come to Samir in a minute, is that at least that mindset of AI competing with doctors is getting blurred at the moment, which wasn't there, I think, 5, 6 years ago, because at that time people were thinking that doctors are going to lose their jobs, but I think it's going to only complement what doctors are doing and helping them in the process. Before I go to Samir, guys, please, there are more than 50 people watching at the moment. Please like, share, and also any question that you've got, please put that in the comment section, and I'll definitely take that in the audience Q&A section. So please, any question. This is a very important topic. Any question that comes to mind for the experts, please put that in the comment section on whichever platform you're watching, and I'll take the question. Samir, where do you see that
Shailendra,
differentiation? Sorry.
yeah. So before you go to the next question to Shamir, your comments on AI replacing the doctor, I'll just give one very small statistics which I have read very recently during this COVID, because before that we were not aware of. So, if you look at the proportion of doctors compared to the population that we have, I think if we start generating a huge number of doctors, probably the double or triple, even then also, in coming another 10 years, will not be able to meet that demand. Okay, so this is the real stat, and this is not only from developing countries like India and all, it is even for the developed countries. Just I wanted to highlight that point also, probably you can
So,
bring it
so,
to.
so, so, so let me add to that. When I was a kid learning in school, I was told that in developed countries, there's a ratio of 1 to 50 per doctor to population. In India, this is 40 years ago, we used to say that 1 to 2,000 is the ratio. I'm 100% sure that has tripled by now in 45 years. So I think your point is really valid, but still there was a bit of a kind of a worry or concern in doctors' mind that their jobs will be lost, which is highly unlikely. Coming to Samir, what do you think about the adoption challenges that we've got at the moment around healthcare and AI?
So let me start by saying um, the interesting thing is that the adoption of AI has started with, I think, like Imtiaz mentioned, most frivolous of things, identifying cat in YouTube videos. Okay. Where we are using AI the most actively today is identifying friends in a photograph, segregating spam from emails. Okay. Now, these are great for experimental purposes, fine. Like Imtiaz mentioned, if you get it wrong, it's fine. No one dies. But as our confidence with these technologies grows, it is time to start making them work for the greater good of humanity. And this is where, again, there is all the data that we collect. Okay, be it medical reports, be it even data collected through the wearable devices, be it the doctor's consultation, none of it is being collected so that AI can act on it. So rather than having data that is AI amenable, which is clean enough for AI to work on, we are trying to work backwards and say, okay, this is the data that I have. How can I clean it up and make it such that AI can work on it? This entire situation has been disrupted now. And there is now a greater understanding of, can I generate primary source of data which can be analyzed by AI? And assisting this is all these kinds of IoT devices and medical IoT devices, which generate data which are easier for an AI to work on. So I'm seeing this trend towards a greater adoption of AI in the medical field because of this movement. However, bulk of the AI is being, like Utpal mentioned, I guess, that bulk of the AI is experimentation in the healthcare space is being done by large institutions who can afford, who have heaps of data and who can afford to hire good data scientists and run these experiments. But the larger an organization, the greater the innovator's dilemma. Okay. Do I get into an unproven technology? Okay. Or do I lay my bets on traditionally what has worked for me? Then again, their entire processes, their systems, their people's mindsets, everyone is trained for low risk, for smooth operation. Whereas bringing in something disruptive like AI means high risk, means initially at least very high cost till it streamlines it, but setting it up is high cost, means looking at data streams differently. So if you go and try and let's say take an idea to NHS in UK, they're going to ask you, so where have you implemented it before? Or if you take it to another institution in the US, they're going to say, show me the proof that it's not going to harm my patients. Okay. You go somewhere else, they'll say, where's the FDA approval? So there are so many hoops to be crossed. Now I ask you this. How many times have you asked Facebook where they store your data?
Never.
How many times have you wondered if your data that you input in a tweet, that you write in a tweet, where is that residing? Who's reading it? Who's controlling it? So the other side of it is we consumers have actually led the advancements of modern day AI. So 30, 40 years ago, companies who could afford huge volumes of, who had the huge volumes of cash to do research in-house in mainframe computers, they were the ones who benefited from technology. Now, it is those big machines and those big investments into structured processes that would hold them back. But the consumer, they are leading the charge. So a lot of people, a lot of startups today in the health tech space, they are targeting their solutions to consumers because the adoption there is higher. Hey, I want to get the benefit of this app. Yes, I'm ready to sign off on some dispensations. Okay, I will let go of my need to have my data stored in my backyard, stuff like that. But I get value in return. That's what I'm really worried about. So consumers can take the lead on AI adoption in healthcare, which is counterintuitive if you ask me. But that's the trend that I would see.
Very interesting. Let me give you a use case or kind of to bring it to life. In other words, so for example, when I go to a doctor and I've got a bit feverish and I'm a bit yellow, pale, for instance, and when I go to a doctor, the first thing he will do is he'll tell me take some Panadol, go home and rest, and
Paracetamol.
do these tests, right? Now, imagine when I went to the doctor, he had access to my history of what my dad's genetic history was, my mother's, and everything, and also that particular system had read all the journals that were published up until now. which a human cannot store in their mind, right? And he just runs that through and asks 5 questions and says, this is a case of something, instead of giving me a medicine to say, have some Panadol, go home and rest and do these tests. Instead, he knows that I should seriously go to get a test now, because my history says that this is what is likely to happen to me because of the symptoms and what I'm going through. That is the kind of help that doctors could get with an AI environment which has got access to huge volumes of data that is coming not only for me from my family's history and everywhere else. Now that would help, and I think that would make a huge difference in terms of adoption, because as I always say, nothing succeeds like success. And here are stories where I don't go to a doctor and say just to go to come back again in 3 days' time, which is what I've seen in last at least 20 years. Other than I was in India, I was given 10 different medicines to actually go take a risk and run that through. Maybe I'll survive or not is a different story. Whether my body can take it or not. But these are the things. I think these are the kind of use cases which are not harmful and also complement the doctors in a way to help. Imtiaz, what do you think? What are the kind of real use case that can tomorrow make a huge difference in the healthcare sector than those big ones which we talk about on a virtual surgery or a help on a surgery or kind of thing?
I think I just addressed two things though. Firstly, both linked to this issue of doctors or medics losing their jobs and also consumer facing. I think maybe the marketing teams in 2017, 2018 were kind of to blame there, but Andrew Enge, who I have a lot of respect for, perhaps made a statement that maybe he would change that now that radiologists were about to lose their jobs when he did that DenseNet thing, which, to be honest with you, my team and many others out there couldn't quite replicate. I don't know if many people were unable to replicate those results from that DenseNet exercise that Stanford produced, and they weren't fully transparent on that. Perhaps there's some criticism there. However, 5 years on, 4 or 5 years on, radiologists are still heavily in demand. So let's take a step back and think it's more about augmenting the medics. Right, it's true that medicine, typically it's a 5-year degree followed by extensive training, and so it's costly, it's time-consuming to produce them. And then in the developing world, there's often a brain drain as well, whereby a lot of the some of the best qualified brains, etc., go to the US, Canada, Australia, wherever, as the case may be, which gives more of then it kind of becomes a vicious circle for certain regions who need those medics. So I think it's about AI augmenting medics, taking that strain off them, helping them in the decision-making process. That's key. And often you tend to see with things like the FDA and regulators, perhaps, I mean, this is what I hear from the VCs and people out there, they're probably more likely to approve something that's doing that than if it's trying to do pure diagnostics facing the consumer. And I think with the consumer facing, it's probably going to be things like preventative healthcare right now that are more likely to run. Now, in some point in the 2030s, 2035, and maybe, I don't know, I'm just speculating here, we've got much stronger AI and huge data sets, maybe, possibly, I don't know, maybe not. AI might start to make deeper inroads into direct diagnostics, and you'll start to get your virtual doctor. I don't know, maybe not. But I think during this decade, at least, it's going to be more about augmenting the medics and helping improve the accuracies, helping find things to alert the doctor or the medical staff of key things to look at that could easily be lost. Because, as you say, the patient history might not be there, or the patient might not be aware of it, or maybe they're unconscious and you're having to deal with someone you don't really know fully what their history is. So perhaps an ability to pair with their mobile phone and their smart glasses that they might have with them, and there'll be some kind of protocol for getting information to a hospital so they can understand. So I think it's all about trying to improve that process of discovery, and assist the medics in this decision-making process with the known information and probabilities. It's a probabilistic world that we live in, rather than saying, hey, we've got some kind of AGI system that is going to be all-seeing, all-knowing, that can come in and, you know, tell you the cure to cancer and tell you all the things that are wrong, that you need immediate treatments for. So it's really getting to that level. And what we've seen with COVID-19, again, is that situations occur where you are forced into remote medicine, and it can, and yet, you know, it can work. Is it ideal? No, but it can work in the current technology. So when we go to more immersive and interactive technologies, hopefully that process can get better and better. And going forwards, as standalone 5G network scale, as wearables spread, more, you know, useful wearables, as Samir said, all that data is then being collected and can run analytics on. We can start to make predictions and get to personalized precision medicine. And your example, Shailendra, taking 2 Panadol or paracetamol. Well, right now, and that's not a criticism of the medics, it's just the way it is, but often taking 2 tablets, irrespective of your age, your body weight, gender, you know, I'm making a 50 kg woman or child, for example, versus a 100 kg male, and standing fingers take 2 paracetamol or Panadol. You know, taking into account someone's history, their body weight, etc., all these things are perhaps things that we can go to in the future to more precision medicine and trying to understand what the best outcome is. And alerts so that, you know, if you have all these wearables and remote medicine and in this era of standalone 5G networks, etc., in the metaverse, if certain bioreadings go beyond a threshold, to trigger alert to your physician, and they can call you in for a checkup. Or if you're known to have a condition and a certain threshold triggers, go to the hospital.
No, totally agree with you. Utpal, any use case that comes to mind that says this is what is going to be a differentiator as far as the healthcare in India is concerned from the AI perspective?
Yeah, so I think India has an advantage because it has got a huge population.
Yep.
Okay, and you can actually collect this medical data, of course, without affecting the privacy or any other uh, critical data kind of things. Still, you can have a lot of data here. So, and I think one thing that has been done in Tata Memorial Cancer Hospital here in Bombay only, along with one of the IIT here, one study, like the cancer patients. Okay, so normally you will see because of some of the chewable things that has been used in India, like gutkas and all, in some parts, some of the states, you see there is a huge number of cancer patients are coming coming to Mumbai and to Tata Memorial for treating their cancers, and these are mostly in the upper portion of the body, either in the mouth or in the esophagus or in the windpipe kind of things. So what they have done is they have done analytics, okay, because now they have got that data, because Tata Memorial is basically dealing with all these cancer patients, right, in India. So they have got some amount of data where the patient is from, what kind of a medical history he is, like from how many years he has been suffering, at what stage he has come to hospital for the treatment. So those kind of informations are already there, and now they have run an analytics. And with that analytics, now they can uh, easily see, okay, what is the reason for this many cancer patients every year coming from this particular areas. Okay, it could have been other reasons also. Probably the water is not good. Okay, some minerals are there, or some kind of radioactive elements are there. Because of that, it is some, or some cancer causing things are there, right? But now it has become clear it is not because of any of the geographical factors in terms of water or any kind of food or any kind of medicine or any other thing, but it is because of that chewable tobaccos okay, which people used to consume a lot from those states. So I think this is a brilliant analysis, and now also government has already run some kind of a awareness camp and awareness initiatives in those places, okay, so that people can be aware of, because if people knows the consequences, then probably many people will not go into that direction, or they will try to restrict themselves, kind of things, because many times it happens that it is only because that awareness is not there at the right time, things takes a different kind of a shape, right? So these are some of the. So I have given only one example here. There could be hundreds of examples wherein the data from this kind of a population, if this can be aggregated, I think we can do some kind of a prediction in many of the health hazards which are happening, or any kind of ailments that are happening, and we can actually prevent those, or run those kind of initiatives wherein we can bring those kind of awareness and all of this, because you will see many even plant-based medicines, right? Especially the medicines which are having some kind of a what do you call, ingredients which are like ores and all. Okay, so if you look at Ayurveda is a very excellent medical system. But at the same time, some of the Ayurveda medicines will have some kind of raw uh, ores, okay, some bhasmas, that is called. They will those kind of things. And these, on a long term consumption of this kind of medicines, okay, there could be different kind of ailments that may come. Okay, although Ayurveda is a very, I think, excellent. I myself uh, 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 consume a lot of Ayurveda medicine, okay, because this is kind of alternative medicine that I have adopted, because these are mostly plant based. But some medicines are, again, it is not plant based, okay, so they are coming from some kind of minerals or something like that, where the process probably is not that efficient like we do in other allopathic kind of things. So here, knowing that this type of medicine, or coming from this kind of plant, or this kind of ores, or this kind of ingredients, if we can do that kind of analysis, that will also give a clarity that whether the medicines that we are consuming, which are very popular, because there are a lot of brands which are very popular, and people even do without going into a doctor. Once they see that kind of symptoms, they start consuming those medicines, okay, which is probably is not correct. So this kind of analysis can be easily done using this huge amount of data that we are generating, and of course, definitely we will have to bring it to one repository, run some kind of a transformation on that, and bring that intelligence out from that data. So this is one very major area. I think Indian startups, and also the government, and also other big companies should look into, along with all healthcare these things. And I think if we can bring this kind of applications in India, this is going to be it will be an example, because in many countries, getting all those data is not so easy, right? Even in Europe, if we talk about Europe, you will not get that data. So that area, I think those things we can definitely improve upon, and bring a lot of new analytics on public healthcare kind of things in India. And now
Okay.
coming to another angle, Shailendra, if you allow me, I think, see, even on the technology that we are using. So we are only talking about AI today. So AI probably can do some areas, it can definitely help. Okay, so probably computer vision is one area wherein, like, wherever there is imaging kind of a thing, it can do brilliant. Similarly, other machine learning models, if you get all the healthcare parameters, you can do a lot of other things. Now, for some of the diseases like cancer, okay, or any kind of tumors that are coming up, I mean, going deep into analysis, wherein basically you go to a tissue level, or even a molecule level kind of a thing, is probably is not possible along only with AI. Okay, So here, very recently, I was going through a research paper, okay, wherein they have talked about the QMRI, okay, quantum magnetic resonance, MRI, quantum MRI, like with the help of some of the quantum services, because now some of the quantum services are ready for use. So they are basically analyzing those images, and also during the MRI process itself, they are going deep into the tissue level where actually the mutation and all those things happen. I'm not a medical expert, so probably I'm not the right person to so. But what I could understand is going a level deeper than what we are getting today in terms of that pathology, clinical pathology is very, very important. And that's where I think bringing new technology under the umbrella or under the purview is also important. And I think quantum is another area which is going to substitute AI in a great way in terms of this kind of diseases which are not, I mean, almost not curable kind of thing.
So you talked about that, and let's think about how let's think about AlphaFold for a minute, right? What impact do you think that will have on the new drug development? How is it going to make a difference as everything is now being run by AI models? And before I get to the next question, Imtiaz, what's your point of view on that?
Yeah, thank you, Shailendra. So just building upon what Utpal said, but essentially coming to the next generation of medicines in the clinical grade side. And if you take a step back and look at the problem formulation, and you see why it's so such a great area for both AI and data science in general, excuse me, because we're talking about huge, giant, big data, which of course AI thrives upon big data, deep neural networks, etc. And your search space in drug discovery is astronomical. Depending on who you believe, there are more potential molecule compound combinations than there are atoms in the universe. In a sense, you can make so many different potential combinations. So it's a combinatorial explosion, as we call it. And when we look at this process, typically getting a new drug to the market, it can typically take anywhere from 7 to 12 years. The COVID vaccine came in record time, but it's a very long drawn process often for other things. And the failure rate is very high. So the average cost of developing a new drug, depending on who you believe, is anywhere from $500 billion US dollars to $2.6 billion if you believe the pharma industry itself. Some biotech firms say they can get it down to $500 million. But less than 1 in 10 candidates make it through. And 33% of that cost, of that huge cost, is at the early stage, finding the candidates that successfully dock molecular docking and can have a beneficial therapeutic usage rather than perhaps damaging someone because of toxicity. So it's a very drawn out process, and then it involves clinical trialing thereafter. Now, we're at the point where we increasingly have rare disease, things that are rare diseases, and not just rare diseases, things like cancer, which are very complicated diseases. And getting this next generation of medicines out is very costly, complicated, yet we need to get there. So AI applications across healthcare are having huge potential impact, and going through that search space, trying to find the right combinations that molecularly dock and don't have known toxicities to humans, and then trying to find a way to then meld that into the clinical trialing process to accelerate this whole pipeline and reduce the cost significantly. And we've had companies like In Silico AI and many others, Deep Genomics, who are really exploding a lot of VC money, billions flowing into that area. And the next evolution of that is going to be towards precision medicine, where we're getting into the patient on the individual's, genetic makeup, biomarkers, etc., and trying to find therapies that maximize the upsides whilst minimize the downsides. That personalized precision medicine, in my view, is the future of medicine. Coming back to AlphaFold 2, that was a huge breakthrough from Google DeepMind, in the sense that they took a structure that included a machine learning AI structure that included a transformer model known as evoformer, doing multiple sequence analysis, and then feeding off to evoformer to predict protein structure. Now, protein folding, without getting into all the complexities, is part of nature and how these proteins fold within the body, and trying to understand that essentially at a very high level, understand that process and predict it, was going to herald the potential of a vast number of new treatments to come through. And the fact that DeepMind have open sourced it and made it available now means that startups and other medical companies can pick it up and run with it. So it's going to transform the whole sector. You can get to developing these next generation medicines, and indeed, even beyond medicine, enzymes, for example, that might eat plastics, with plastics all over the ocean, etc. So huge consequences for humanity. And the point very quickly that Utpal raised of quantum computing, but when fused with AI machine learning, right, we'll be able to go through vast search spaces exponentially faster to find those right candidates, but also help accelerate precision medicine so that we could get tailored, targeted therapeutics back to the individual on a more cost-effective basis, so that we can start tackling some of these rare diseases that right now are being too costly to build therapeutics for, because the trade-off wasn't there for the pharma companies, etc., and the hospitals, the research hospitals. I think we're going to go there now over the next 5 to 10 years. So fingers crossed we can start getting much better results going forwards.
Samir, so let me come to Samir. Samir, you've been quiet. What do you see the impact of AlphaFold on new drug development? Is it going to, of course, it is speeding up the process, but what else it is going to impact? Is it going to also help in reducing the risk of trialing on people prematurely? What's your point of view on that?
So, as Imtiaz pointed out, the whole process is very complex and takes a long time. What we have seen with COVID vaccines is crunching of that time. It can be done, and technology played a large part of it. So largely mRNA molecules, for example, we can synthesize these molecules, and now we don't need to wait for the culturing of the normal cells, and such kind of synthetic processes will significantly crunch down the time and the risks involved in new drug discovery, new process, new formulations, new APIs. Combine that with a digital health in the primary healthcare space. So now, not only have we reduced the time and effort and complexity of discovering new drugs, and we are now applying it to people with greater precision in terms of what their current body weight, size, etc. is, but also what happens from a perspective of if they have been administered those medicines, how are they progressing? So I can see the AI models moving from the healthcare industry, moving from where we are today. We are essentially performing post-mortem on symptoms. Okay, you've had a symptom. Now you're broken. Now we have to fix you. 2, moving into, okay, if these are your parameters, if this is your genetic makeup, if these are the medicines that we have delivered to you, you are likely to progress along this path to recovery. And if there are any variations, then we track it a lot closer. We intervene in time to impact a patient's health quicker. So what's happening is not just, like Utpal mentioned, not just AI alone, but an AI alone impacting one aspect of diagnostics, for example. But several technologies need to converge to create that perfect storm, which will bring about this change. So data has to explode. Thanks to IoT devices, algorithms will become more accurate. At the same time, we will be more forgiving of innovations. We will take to innovations quicker, easier, because now with all these things put together, the risk to human life has reduced. So from a trials and formulations and clinical trials perspective, when the risk reduces to human life, obviously we will end up getting more innovation going, more drugs discovered, quicker, shorter time to market, and that will bring down the cost per vial or per dose to a patient.
Okay, you mentioned something, and that brings a question to me, which I can throw not only to you three gentlemen but also to the audience. You mentioned algorithm, so let me ask this question to the audience. And I know, audience, there's lots to ingest. It's like very complicated stuff that these guys are talking around. But if you've got a question, put that in the comment section. Don't hesitate. We will take the questions. But having said that, I want to ask a question to everyone. Are you comfortable by an algorithm diagnosing you? Not instead of a human, an algorithm diagnoses you. Are you comfortable getting that done? Say that yes or no in the comment section, and give me a reason if you've got any. But at least say yes or no. There are lots of people watching this. Please tell me. Let's do a random poll where we ask a question whether you think that if an algorithm diagnoses you will be comfortable or not. Let me ask the panelists. Utpal, will you be comfortable if tomorrow you get sick and an algorithm runs through you and diagnoses you? Will you be comfortable?
Yes, absolutely. Because if you see the conventional diagnosis which is happening, it is nothing but some data points. Okay, uh, and the same thing the algorithm is also will be doing, and I think it will be doing it in a much rigorous way, in a much intelligent way. Because what happens, so if somebody has some kind of ailment and he has done say probably a echocardiogram, a ECG, some blood test, and some other tests, what doctors will do, doctor will look at into different parameters, and definitely he will also run an algorithm inside his mind, inside his head. Okay, and he will come up with some kind of a treatment plan. Same thing AI algorithm is also doing. But yes, of course, I would like to see a verification process, okay, a human intervention of the whatever the outcome is. Okay, so that is very important, because without that, I think probably only relying on that model will be a little bit difficult. But yeah, I think even a day will come when you will be more comfortable to do your diagnostic with an algorithm than a doctor. So answer is of course yes.
Imtiaz, what do you think?
Well, it really depends. If it was the algorithm on its own, frankly, no. I mean, I've built some of these things before, and they're not there yet, to be very frank. We still need to expand the data. We still need explain better. You need improvements in explainability, etc. However, if it was augmented by a human, then yes. So if it's helping the human physician or specialist in the decision making, so that I can then ask the physician or the specialist, why did you make this diagnosis, or what's the rationale for it, which every patient will be entitled to, then absolutely yes, because that's what the AI is there to do, to decrease the workload from to take the strain off the medic, and that it can assist the medic in a probabilistic sense. So this might probabilistically, this is the diagnosis that I'm coming up with, and then a medic can double check that, and you can ask them as a patient, what's the basis for this, or what do you think is happening, and they can evaluate. But if it's just a algorithm spitting out you have X, Y, Z, I don't think we're there right now. There are certain cases, limited cases, with certain devices or other situations like an X-ray or whatever medical image where it could get to decent numbers. But in I would still want a medic to be able to look at it and validate or agree at this point.
Samir, what do you think?
When you go last, you can have a very short answer. Agree with all of the above, kind of. But having said that, let me share so we were working with ECG data from Holter devices. So Holter devices are basically small sensors that you put on top of your heart that measures your heart. And that data is collected and analyzed. Algorithms that we used predicted the kind of heart disease a patient would have with 97% accuracy consistently. Okay. And that is higher than the accuracy level you would expect from an experienced doctor going through the ECG reading. Now, imagine that kind of data being collected not for a period of 24 hours or 3 days or a week, which traditionally happens in Holter devices today, but if it's happening for 10 years. So a doctor is trained, 20 years experience to read one ECG reading and make a judgment on it. And AI is trained for data on 20 years to make a recommendation. Still, and that is why at times AI can be more accurate than the doctor. It's not the doctor's skill. It's just that he has less data points to base his decision on. Still, I would want my AI results to be shown to the doctor because, like Imtiaz mentioned, AI today cannot explain itself. Maybe a doctor might not as well. A doctor goes by intuition as well at times. But having said that, what AI or health tech adoption has shown, AI will be successful in healthcare space when it is invisible to the patient today. If we may bring it out, forefront, then there would be a big pushback. We are people of science, we are people of AI, and we are saying we will not trust an AI alone. We will need a doctor to come between AI and us. Imagine the common man on the street who does not have the benefit of insights on AI that we have. He's going to be even more worried. So I think AI today, if it augments the clinician, is going to go farther than if we try AI to interact with the masses directly and offer them. Yes, you can have, a bit of a chatbot that goes in and collects data, does some NLP programming and spurts out some generic advice. Okay, but that is generic advice. It's only slightly better than what you will read on the website of a hospital or one of the medical websites. Okay. In terms of clinical diagnosis and analysis, we still need the doctor in front. And I think at least for the next at least this decade, definitely so. I don't know how fast it'll grow, but I don't see that going away in the near future.
It's funny. It's funny to hear the fact that we know that very well that humans can err, but machines actually can't. But we still are saying that we would want a human to come in between the machine and the diagnosis. Isn't that funny? What do you think?
So Sharendra, if I just jump in, I think it's important that, look, I gave the example of Google, and I've got AI models for healthcare in the past as well. And Google and diabetic retinopathy were claiming a high 90 something, I think in some cases even 99% accuracy. But in the clinical field, it collapsed to 79%. Now, this is the challenge for many AI startups, because you can produce results that say, we got 97% accuracy, we're beating the medic. But when you put it into clinical production, it collapses. So I think we have to be very careful when we say as beating medics, because in the clinical settings, it's still reaching challenges. And that is the issue about both data, scaling data, because you've got huge heterogeneity. So there were certain examples, and not being offensive to the Chinese here, but some Chinese companies, giant ECG readings, get very high accuracy, etc. 40, 50 million data set, but it's the same genetic, there's a lack of heterogeneity in genetics there. So you have to have, like I said, we're not homogenous as people. Yes, we're all humans, but we have different biomarkers, etc. So heterogeneity is an important thing in your underlying data. Diversity in terms of race, in terms of genetics, are very important when you're producing a service and a product that is going to be applied across a diverse population. So these are things we have to get to, as well as getting to clinical grade means that unlike a medical image or whatever, or some readings that you're training your model on, where, like I said, you filter out the bad ones, right? That's what we do when we do the test train. In the real world, data is dirty, right? There's noise, there are issues with equipment at times. So it's still a bit of a challenge yet in getting to that final mile. We're kind of 90% away there. And so absolutely AI is a huge advocate for AI. My Twitter handle even has the name AI at the front. But I think this is why in healthcare it's taking a bit longer, as Samir has pointed out before, because of the potential consequences. It doesn't mean we're not going to get there, but I think it is going to be an ongoing journey.
Good stuff. So I come to my last question, but guys watching this, I know more than 50 people are watching this live at the moment. If you've got a question, please put that in the comment section. After this question of mine, I will get into the audience Q&A and we will take your questions as we go. So if you've got a question, any clarification you want, put that in the comment section and I'll take it very soon. A question that's a bit close to my heart. I come from a developing country, living in a developed country, I understand that, but I always want to give back. So I want to understand how startups, because that's the new community that's coming up and they're nimble, they can get things done quickly. How do you see startups running and creating kind of solutions in the healthcare area which can serve those remote areas in developing countries? Anything that comes to mind, any startup that shines out, or any idea that comes to mind? Oh, that's not explored yet. What do you think, Utpal, about that?
Yeah, Shailendra. So I think this is a very what do you call? It's a question which is close to my heart as well. Uh, and here I can see there are some solutions, probably not yet implemented in that way. But one solution that I mean, I don't know how much AI is there into that, but I would like to discuss this. So normally during COVID time, what happened during the first wave and the second wave of COVID in India? So I mean, hospitals were all full. There were no beds in the hospital, and also sometimes it happened like many of the patients collapsed. Okay, before they can actually reach to the hospital because of the scarcity of ambulances and all this. So one academia, they have come up with one solution, which is like all what do you call high-end camera-related solutions, which is fitted in the ambulance itself, and there were speakers and all other things around, and also in the ambulances there were medical staffs. They are not doctors, they are not even primary nurses also. They are like paramedical kind of staffs who were directly guided, like looking at the patient's condition to give oxygen or give some kind of medicines initially, so that he can or she can at least reach to hospital. And the situation was like that. Even if you reach the hospital, then also, I mean, getting a bed into the hospital is because all the beds are occupied. So many of the patients were there in the ambulance. They were treated just in a room, giving them oxygens kind of thing. So I think these are some solutions which are, and also one solution that I've seen. I think this is IIT Roorkee. has done the ventilators, right? So there were scarcity of ventilators, and they have made those ventilators. So these are although not AI applications, but I would say like this played a major role, and actually it was an alarm that we all had, that we need to do a lot of innovation in this healthcare area. And unfortunately, I think I am not again generalizing this statement. I think if you look at the other industries, like for example, the IT itself, okay, the innovations that are happening or how it is like skyrocketing, okay, at least in last 1 or 2 decades. But unfortunately, because of monopoly or whatever it is there, healthcare, okay, that technological innovation or that kind of a innovation which is reaching out to the common people has not happened, at least in last 1 decade. And COVID has proved that we need to do a lot of innovations in this area. Okay, not only to combat with kind of a pandemic scenario, but also normal healthcare in the rural areas and all other things. So I think I will encourage startups. Okay, so to come up with newer and newer solutions. And now even our government, Niti Aayog, they are supporting. There are a lot of app challenges and application challenges are there, wherein the academia or any individual, they can participate, come up with their concepts or their proof of concepts or pilots, and they can showcase. And I think getting a fund today, if you have a good idea or a good solution, I think it's not difficult. Okay, and also I think the funding which is coming from outside, okay, because we talk about borderless healthcare, right, kind of thing. So borderless healthcare will only be possible when the investors from outside are going to put money into different countries and different these things, because that is the first level of collaboration where we can actually take our best practices or best solutions and best things across the globe, right? And that I think slowly and gradually started, because I will be able to talk about only India. So I can see a huge interest of the investors in the Indian startups who are working in the healthcare area, because they have already understood, because this is an emerging area and this needs that kind of attention. So that is the scenario here, Shailendra, as you know. But I would say there are a lot of works to be done actually to take that healthcare. I'm not talking about digital healthcare, the healthcare itself, okay, the basic healthcare, to the remotest corner of our of this country. Okay, and I think this can become a model for any other developing countries to showcase, okay, such a huge population, okay, how medical facilities can be taken to the remotest corner. This can actually, this is a test bed, and this can be a model.
Okay, before I come to Samir, and I will, because he does exactly that. So I'll go to Imtiaz. Imtiaz, what do you think? How can we reach any solution that comes to mind? Think outside of the world, outside of the box, and think about any startup that you've seen or you think that could do a good job in reaching out to the remote areas of developing countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, in that part of the world, or even China, I would say, where we could help a common man living in a, well, even in Australia, with someone living in the center of Australia where medicine can't reach. Any startup that comes to mind, or anything that you think could make a difference?
Well, I mean, there is a bit of activity around remote medicine, and I think it will play an important role again in augmenting and helping the local staff, because if you're in a remote rural area, say in Africa, Latin America, certain parts of Asia, you won't necessarily have the specialists there in the local hospital that you may have in a big city, right? And often, we've also seen sometimes that some of the disease outbreaks like Ebola, etc., were often starting in remote areas, and the sooner you can detect it and intervene, the quicker you can prevent a new epidemic breaking out. So So there's both disease prevention or fast responses, as well as, for example, being able to give help with things like complicated diseases like cancer, etc., where maybe the specialists are in big cities, and in the remote areas, the hospital has less of that facility available to them. So certainly you can see a lot of that AI helping enable that. And so what I'm trying to say is that I believe that the key role here is constantly AI augmenting and taking off the strain of medical workers. And I think some of the things that Samir is doing are very interesting, because bringing in specialists from different areas for a holistic approach, I think that's also going to be a big part of the solution going forwards, so that you can start bringing, get a holistic review of people, and predict perhaps even before an illness starts to become too severe, and make an early stage intervention, which is much more cost efficient and better for the patient. So it's improving patient outcomes and trying to engage at an early stage. I think aside from remote medicine, I think you've got things like ultranomics, which is applying again in the ECG and AI space, which I think has got FDA approval. You've got things like Deep Genomics in Canada, and one of my favorites in Silicon Medicine, who developed an AI engineered drug for pulmonary fibrosis, which is one of those rarer diseases. So again, we're going to be more and more, as I keep on saying, into this world of precision medicine, targeting the individual and tailoring to their needs. But yes, absolutely, remote medicine can play a big role in helping giving your specialist, being in a big city, perhaps where they have the more advanced hospital resources, being able to help service communities that are in remote areas, rural areas where they perhaps don't have the healthcare infrastructure, and give them the guided intervention to the local healthcare teams. You could perhaps fly a drone out maybe into some of these regions with computer vision, right, and take readings, etc. Google have been using weather balloons to give internet to areas in Africa and Latin America that didn't have internet coverage. Maybe in the future it'll be 5G beaming down from satellites across these areas, and then you can actually, with 5G, start getting metaverse type interactions, or more advanced holographic interactions with the remote stuff, like Samir's healthcare, for instance. I'm not trying to tell Samir what his business plan is, but I'm just making this up as an example. With his team and his medics being able to give that support to someone in these rural areas where they wouldn't have the access to those specialists, but 5G transmitting from a balloon or from a satellite station, enabling immersive experiences where they can actually see with computer vision, etc., 3D hologram of the patient with haptic technology, touch and sense, and ask the patient questions and try and give guided treatments, including to the local healthcare people, staff. So I think that's the world we're going to.
No, I totally agree with you. I think drones taking medicine to rural areas is still happening at the moment. It happens almost on everyday basis now. That's become that advanced. The metaverse could be a game changer in that as well. With the haptic kind of feedback stuff for the patient and the doctor, I think we could do a lot of them there. Now, before I get to Samir, guys, if you've got a question, this is your last chance. Put that in the comment section, and I'll take that in just after what Samir is going to tell us. And Samir is doing exactly what we're talking about: taking medicine to the remote areas, taking doctors to meet the people in the resource areas, and he's done that exceptionally well. And I'll not steal the thunder. I'll give it to Samir to explain how you're doing that. It all started during COVID, and you've done that for not only a developing country like India, but also developed country like Australia, New Zealand, and people are your customers, not customers, but patients across the world. Please explain what you do.
Sure. Thank you very much for that. So, when this entire surge happened in India, like I said, we gathered a large team of doctors who were volunteering their time. And thank you to those doctors for all the effort that they've put in They've spent a lot of, so they would work on this after their day job. So they would wake
Yep.
up in the nights and support the patients. And then we realized that while the patients in the cities, they had access to some healthcare, there were these remote rural areas where they did not have any health facilities at all. But we also realized that one thing unique about India was internet had reached everywhere through the mobile phones. So that was a big tick in the box. Now, we had medical expertise available, and then we had a large population that needed that medical expertise. And quite simply, what we did was use technology to connect the two. Now, to do this, we worked alongside not-for-profit NGOs who had inroads into these villages. And in particular, there is a not-for-profit organization called Sarthak Foundation in the state of Uttar Pradesh, who were going into the remote areas, and they were spreading education more than health at that time. And we realized that given where COVID was, it was more likely that children might be the only uninfected person in the family. And the older the family member, the more likely he was to get infected. So we targeted our messaging to these children, and we trained them to become nurses and doctors remotely. And this is where I can see applications of metaverse happening when we scale it out further. But imagine taking children, school children, and training them that if your parents fall ill, okay, these are the symptoms you need to look out for. If they have these symptoms, then they have COVID. If they have COVID, then you need to do A, B, C, D. Okay. Now, you need to then take measurements of their oxygen. And how do you take measurements of oxygen? You need to take measurements of their temperature. This is the right way of doing it, of putting the thermometer in the mouth and stuff like that. So our doctors from Australia, New Zealand, India, they all got together and they were training the children on how to step up and function like nurses to their family members and to their community once they get impacted. And as long as they were entering their the health data of these patients, the doctors could view it remotely and could advise the children and the community on what is to be done. And the beauty of it all is we were able to deliver this for free at no cost because the doctors were volunteering their time. And the only tech platform that we were using, that was like you build it up once, and then the recurring costs are not all that great. So through this process, we ran campaigns of enabling people to operate at higher levels of medical expertise in looking after their loved ones. And imagine, that's the key thing. It's one thing to have a stranger look at your face and punch and give you an injection. It is quite another to have your child hold your hand and look after you. You know, that feeling of belonging, that love itself makes you feel stronger to fight the disease. So we learned all these, whatever I spoke about is everything that we have learned from these children, everything that we have learned from these doctors. So 15 doctors came on a panel and they helped us devise this new model of care. And now we are rolling it out further. So I'd urge everyone who's listening, please go to globalmedics.ai and check us out. And if you want to see how AI can help you, okay, you could go to our Facebook page, and we've built an AI bot that can do your mental health assessment. Okay, sorry, wrong word. Your emotional well-being. So It'll ask you a series of questions, and if you answer it accurately, it will tell you where you are on the spectrum of stress, anxiety, or depression. So a lot of these, like I said, the insights of what may be required by the patients at large, by the villagers, or by the other members of the community that we are serving came from the humanitarian efforts of the doctors. And now we are looking back and seeing how can technology help us scale that out. And once we scale that out, we bring the cost lower. More people can benefit from it. More people can benefit from it. The more data we get, our AI becomes more accurate. There's less load on the doctors, and the doctors can see more patients. And then it becomes a kind of a beneficial cycle. And that's what we are hoping to achieve. And we'd really love to hear from members of the audience here on how any ideas that you have, just share it in the chat. Based on whatever you've heard, how can we take it to the next level? What can we do? Look at your own family, look at your own community, and look at what are the problems that you can see. And based on whatever you've heard, just share some crazy ideas with us. How can startups, how can governments, how can existing healthcare organizations change the game by using technology, by using AI to help you, to help your family, to help your community?
Good stuff.
So let's come up with some crazy ideas, guys.
Yep, if you've got an idea, put that in the comment section as well. I'll take that. Having said that, usually we don't allow anyone to promote their company or a product on the show, but this is such a noble cause, and absolutely, you're doing a service to the community. Samir, doing it full time, without any funding, without any support. I think it leads to a call out, and so I thought
Thank
I will
you.
not stop you. You should say that. You should call out, and people. This guy is doing it out of goodwill only. He's not benefiting out of it. So please, 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 support him. Try and take it to your people, whosoever you think can benefit from it. Someone who's suffering from COVID or does not have access to medicines or a doctor, then you can do that through Global Medics. Samir, one question. If anyone wants help, how do they reach out to the group of doctors that you've got?
Yeah. So globalmedics.ai, there are two links. You could just press on the link and it'll take you to the site where you can just ask your questions, as simple as that. And then if you have another, a family member who's suffering over a long term, then there's another. So this is the outpatient support service. And then there's an inpatient support service where we could look at long-term care of the patients.
Good stuff. Okay, now I'm running short of time, so let me quickly run through the audience Q&A. Not many questions as I expected, because this is healthcare and people are scared to say stuff, and also people are scared because it's something not very natural to them. But anyways, we've got some questions. Let me run that through. So let's go to the audience Q&A. Give me a second. I'll be back. Okay, before I start the questions, I've got audience from all over the world today. I had, and let me just quickly run that through. I had Ehsan from Sydney. I had Dr. Suren Shukla from Delhi. I had Torsa Das from Bangalore. I had Ankit Gond from Mumbai. I had Amin Ayarna from Ghana. So we had a debut from Africa as well. Then okay, let's come to the meat. Someone asked, Debjyoti Banerjee asked, wondering if a recording of this event will be available on online access later on. Congratulations to the panelists. Thank you, Debjyoti. Yes, the recording is available on LinkedIn for a few days, but on YouTube forever. I will post the link in the comment section post this session, You can take that link. Please share it with as many people as possible so that more people learn from it. It will be on YouTube forever. It's there on Facebook as well, and all the other platforms wherever which is connected. So yes, the answer is yes. Okay, I had Hamid Abdallah from Burkina. I don't know where that is. Faso. I don't know. Okay, let's get to the question. The question that I have is from Dr. Suren Shukla, and he says, are there any meaningful examples of exploration of human cognition using artificial intelligence in healthcare? Imtiaz, do you want to have a go at that?
So human cognition, I'm not sure quite what they mean by that, but what we can say is that I mean, areas like explainability and causal inference are developing very, very rapidly. So be it like the transformer models with self-attention, neurosymbolic AI, composite AI, things like liquid neural networks, which are starting to get better and better at things like causal inference and also giving more explainability. So I think over the next 3 years, we're going to see substantial improvements in that area, if that's what we mean by human cognition. Does it mean that we'll be at the level of the human brain, AGI? No. But we're going into the area of broad AI from narrow AI with multitasking, transformer models, etc., and also the ability for better explainability and better causal inference.
In my view, explainability creates confidence and trust. And I think that is the missing element for the unexplained neural networks for such a long time. I think explainability can do a great cause. Anyone else wants to add to this? Samir or Utpal?
Yeah, I think Imtiaz and you both have answered correctly. So probably the question is more into like, is there any kind of exploration of the human cognition itself through artificial intelligence? So we got the idea of artificial neural network from the human cognitive system only. Now they are saying that with artificial intelligence, are you exploring human cognition? I mean, because we don't know how exactly the human cognition works. So till now, what we are thinking is, if we think about the visual system only, so how it works is basically it. I mean. It is basically the light waves goes to our visual cortex. It is transformed into electrical signals, then falls into the neurons and all those. So this model has been taken into semiconductor in a programmatic manner, and we are trying to do artificial neural network in that way. Now the question is basically, is artificial intelligence being used to explore further the human cognition? So honestly, I don't have the correct answer for that. Probably Samir can try.
Yeah, again, I'm not sure if I understood the question well, but I could think of something like Neuralink, maybe, where people are implanting chips in the brain um, with the with the plan, with the aim of enhancing a human's capabilities or augmenting humans' capabilities literally inside the brain. So whether that can be used in healthcare, um, look, it could be used in healthcare where we are impacting certain neurons in cases where people have lost their limbs, or you're looking at different kinds of prosthetics. So that could be another area that is developing rapidly, and maybe that could be another space to answer your question where AI kind of technologies are helping human cognition.
So Shailendra, if I could just jump in very quickly. Thank you to Samir and also to Utpal for clarifying that question. I'll say very quickly. So in terms of human cognition itself, Stanford University, Dr. David Breer has been using AI to study neurology of the human brain. So that's one example. There are a few others out there in Canada as well. where neuroscientists are applying AI to, or deep neural networks to try and understand the human brain. On the point Neuralink, it's neural so neural links to the brain, rather than the chip in the brain. And I think perhaps Elon Musk is looking at the wrong solution there. What we've seen as examples of caps that you can put in the skull that still read the brain signals. And in healthcare, it's been used for giving paraplegics, for example, people who don't have the ability to move their body, with the power of their brain to move wheelchairs around. That's actually been done to remotely move them. So it's giving better quality of life. And I think when we get to 6G in particular, about 2030, 6G will enable a lot more of these wireless devices you put on your head that could interact with your thoughts or your brains and help interact with the objects around you. So those are two examples.
Brain-computer interface is definitely a huge area, and it's seeing significant research dollars being spent. I've been involved with some universities here who are specializing in BCI, and the kind of work they're doing is absolutely amazing. There was one professor who conceptualized this autonomous wheelchair where a disabled person could be controlling an autonomous wheelchair or semi-autonomous through signals from his brain. So these are, again, use cases where the keyboard might go away in the future and you could just be talking to your computer in the distant future, maybe.
No, you're right. I think the way Dr. Suren has put that question is around, re-engineering or, reverse engineering the process where, as we said, that we took a leap from human intelligence to create artificial intelligence. Then what he's saying is artificial intelligence helping in enhancing human intelligence? It's just re-engineering the whole thing altogether. Anyways, the second part of the question is, globally and in particular India, healthcare data due to lack of adoption of EMR and EHR, how AI is likely to be effective and what areas to demonstrate success? Anyone wants to have a go at that question?
Yeah, sure. I'll go.
Yeah.
So it's true in India, particularly, 90% of the hospitals don't have an electronic health record system. In Australia, we started off with a campaign to digitize healthcare into a consolidated database. And it's been 20 years and we're still implementing it. We aren't there yet. So this is not an easy task to do. And one hypothesis that we have kind of developed is, rather than this coming top down, maybe we should explore going bottom up. Maybe this is an opportunity where we as individuals, the way we create our files of all our certificates, our degrees and certificates into a folder, similarly, we need to create digital files in blockchain and move around with it. Now, I'm glad you brought up the example of India, where, yes, today we are seeing that 90% of hospitals don't have EHR, but at the same time, India is also a country where we have had something like Aadhaar implemented, which took the entire population and we've digitized their identities. So if there is any country in the world that can create this consolidation of health records, India has already been there and done it once before. So I have a lot of hope that, given the government announcements, and we've lost Utpal for a moment, but given the government announcements in creating a similar kind of a records database for health, we will get there. And of course, there will be significant questions around how that data is used, how it is made available to people who can create meaningful and purposeful innovations and build AI around that data. But in the meantime, startups are going out there. There are so many startups working to create electronic health records from scratch by having individuals capture their data in a mobile app and take photographs of their medical records and store it. So this is already happening right now, and there are several startups who are doing it.
Imtiaz, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and as Samir said, going back to the bottom up, even at the beginning and the source, what we're seeing now, for example, is medical staff can actually do speech to text. So rather than just writing the notes, which was very time-consuming and administrative, they can speak into a device. It can even be their mobile, and it will transcribe digitally, electronically, what they were saying, their words into text. So patient summary, a clinical evaluation, being digitally created right from the outset. So I think it's going to happen. It can't be stopped. Yes, it is going to take time to fully get there, to make all records digital. But I think increasingly is that through technology, through startups, through tech majors, all of it combined, there's so many entry points into digital now, and the accuracies have improved. Of course, the medic still needs to read through the note to make sure it's correct. But why not, instead of sitting there handwriting everything, and then there's always that joke about reading doctors' handwriting, that in actual fact, you can create digital right from the outset, right at the beginning, and store it digitally, which means now it can be transported anywhere, it can be analyzed, etc., for predictive analytics. That is the world we're going to. It can't be stopped.
Perfect. Thank you very much for those comments, and I think hopefully Dr. Suren Shukla has got his answer. Dr. Shukla, if you've got anything else, let us know. Okay, there is a comment from Ehsan. He says, yes, when assisted with humans. What he meant to say was that, yes, he's able to get algorithm diagnose him as long as it's assisted. So that's a consensus then. That's how it is going to be in the future. Manoj Parmar says, just as I would like to know the background of a doctor, I would like to first know the background of the algorithm, on what basis it has been put together. It's the same, exactly the same comment that was made by, all of you guys. And finally, I've got this comment, as you asked Samir, he says, I have an idea, Samir and Shailendra, there are many misdiagnoses or late diagnoses. I think AI could help with accurate and prompt diagnosis.
Absolutely.
And I think we all agree with that. And we need a bit of work to be done in that space. Very quickly, this is the last question. I would ask all of you, have you seen anything happening in that area that you've seen, which we can share with the audience, or this is still work in progress?
Before we go there, Shailendra, on this question that Bavli Hannah has asked, after a misdiagnosis has happened by a human doctor, how would you get AI to fix it? And what kind of complications would that create for the healthcare organization where this has happened?
Well, if it has happened with a doctor, imagine the havoc that would have been created. Well, at times you don't even know.
It depends, doesn't it? So to check on the urgency of the situation. So if it's a chronic illness, then perhaps what you have. Medicine is an iterative process, right? But it's a probabilistic thing often. Sometimes it's certain. It's very clear. This is what you got, and it's definitive. But in many other cases, it's hidden, and it's some deep inside you. It's an iterative process of elimination. And maybe if the medic has said X, but the patient is not responding to the treatment, you know that in actual fact you should reevaluate your diagnosis. And maybe what AI can do is make that intervention to speed that up. Because right now a lot of people fall through the cracks, don't they? Where they'll be diagnosed with something, they got sent away, given a load of medication, maybe some really powerful painkillers, opiates or whatever. and they're not responding, they're doing badly, and they're just left, unfortunately, stuck in that system. Whereas maybe if they'd been called back and said, oh, after a week or two, you haven't really responded as we hoped you would do, so let's have another go. Let's double check. Maybe we missed something on a scan. So I think where AI can perhaps play a role is helping in that chronic situation where patients are not responding to prompt reevaluations of the diagnosis and help that iterative process. If it's an emergency situation, life and death, if there's misdiagnosis, well, that's always a very tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah. So with whatever we did over the last 1 year, there were significant challenges we had because the virus was mutating, and the advice, the clinically correct advice, or from a regulation perspective, what the correct advice should be, kept changing on a weekly basis. So what was correct advice last week became incorrect this week. And we definitely faced this challenge big time when trying to support the patients remotely. And one of the ways that we tried getting around with this challenge was to have multiple doctors do peer review of consultations in real time. So if we have, so in our public support channel, when one doctor was advising a patient, there were 4 other doctors in the channel reading what was happening between the doctor and the patient. And then we had a back channel where the doctors would confer and agree on what diagnosis or what advice should be given to the patient. So we had 2 parallel streams, one keeping a check on the other in a way. And today we did not have the AI built up, the knowledge base built up when we were delivering this, but that knowledge base could potentially be AI. And if all medical advice that is being delivered is digitally, then we could have a parallel, let's say, knowledge base or guardrails that could almost in real time guide the doctor on AI's recommendation in that particular situation. And that can provide additional comfort to the doctor that what he's delivering is correct from a research perspective, because the AI has read hundreds of research papers and is delivering their summarized knowledge to the doctor in real time.
Yep. I think GPT-3 could play an important role in doing that as well.
I wouldn't want the AI to get creative with medical advice.
No, absolutely, very well said. That's a misdiagnosis. But I think, if not misdiagnosis, at least the late diagnosis can be really taken care of if we had a proper kind of infrastructure that could help individuals, various, what do you call it? I'm not getting the medical term, but various.
Second opinions?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, a second opinion could actually help there as well. I'm just not getting the medical terminology. There's a terminology for that, and for some reason it's evading me. But yes, late diagnosis can be sorted out using that. At least it could give a thought process in a doctor's mind to think in a different way, right? Utpal, do you want to add anything to it?
I think absolutely agree you with all of you. I think nothing more to add in terms of what is, but what yeah. So I think accuracy, bringing more accuracy in the diagnostic process, and there are many parameters involved into that. So, and when you are doing it kind of a assisted AI assisted kind of a mode, so there are factors like how accurate your data is, okay, where the AI has been trained. So that matters a lot. Second thing, probably because the body dynamics is so what do you call it is so minute in some of the cases and so diversified. Even a smallest thing probably uh, makes the decision making process a huge difference. So if you look into those angles, then I think there could be a approach which is kind of a layered approach, okay, rather than having like feeding it to one model and getting the output kind of a thing. Rather than there could be a layered approach of doing this diagnostic, and at various level there will be digital verification and then the human verification, of course, that we have discussed kind of thing will be. But I agree with all of you, like that. Yes.
Good stuff. Okay, very quickly, finally, a comment from Bavli. He's listening to the conversation. He said, "Great insights, Samir and Imtiaz. I think we need to have an integrated system of medical services. In cases of multiple chronic diseases, medications have side effects, and one medication treating a certain disease could worsen the other disease. Consequently, we could use big data analytics and AI to choose the best combination of medication to provide personalized treatment, and that leads to the area of targeted or targeted medicine, which have been talking about the whole evening today. So thank you, Babli. Thank you for your comments. I think yes, we're getting towards there, and that's what is it. Um, Guys, thank you very much. I would really, really like to thank all three of you and the audience. To the audience, guys, this is very, very important. So if you've not yet liked, please like it, because when you like it, more people get access to it and they view it as well. So please do like and share. We're not getting anything out of it. It is just out of we want to reach out to as many people as possible so that they can understand the value AI is providing into healthcare. And these guys have spent a good 2 hours in showcasing and discussing those areas. So please, please, please like and share and comment so that more and more people can learn from it. And if you get a chance, please press the follow button and subscribe button so that you get to hear more information and more ideas as we go forward for this show and the other shows that come and play. Before I go, I would first of all like to thank Imtiaz for taking your time out. Like always, Utpal, taking your time out. Thank you very much. And Samir, before you go, I would like to stress once again, if you could tell our audience how can they get access to your environment if they want to reach out, if they know someone who's struggling getting access to a doctor, how do they do that? Very
Yeah.
quickly in 2 minutes.
Thank you. Just go to globalmedics.ai. Scroll down, there's a link, outpatient department, click on it, and you'll be in. So
Absolutely.
we use Telegram Messenger. It'll just open up a page on Telegram Messenger, follow the prompts, and then once you're in the channel, just ask your question, and one of the 130 doctors will respond and support you.
So see that. Once upon a time, they said that doctors are most expensive and very hard to get. And here you are, someone who's used AI to make it available for people in remote areas and everywhere, free of cost at the moment. So a great cause, great noble cause, Samir. Really, really appreciate it. I would like to thank you as much as I can. And thank you very much. Thank you, all three of you, taking your time. Thank you, the audience, for taking your time out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
very much.
much. Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. So, guys, these were the guys. I think it was great conversation. Everyone loved it. I'm still getting some messages. There is a message from Gautam Sambhare who says very informative discussion. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much, Gautam. Thank you for watching. And thank you very much. I can't thank you guys enough. I can't thank Imtiaz, Samir, and Utpal enough. These guys have done a great job today, taking their couple of hours of your busy schedule to come and talk to you guys. Thank you very much, and I will see you probably next week with another option and another AI Insight with Thought Leaders series episode. So thank you and bye now.